It is wonderful to see you all here. My name is Kathleen McCluskey, and I'm the Outreach Director for Organic Seed Alliance. I have the honor to serve as a co-facilitator today with my colleagues Kiki Hubbard and Florentina Rodriguez. We're also joined by OSA's Rebecca Koronowski Woods, who is serving as our technology leader, and our interpretation team, Peter Feldstein and Viviana Tipiani. I'm so excited for today's session, and there's a lot of co-hosts and moderators and folks that have been strategizing and connecting to put together this 90 minutes. So I'm just really grateful to all of you all who have been helping, and I'm really grateful to everybody who's showing up today for this conversation. I'd like to bring our attention to these discussion guidelines on how we're going to engage with one another today. And I will read them quickly here. This will be a touchstone for our time together as a full group, including in our discussions in the smaller groups, because we all do have a role in tending this space. In this discussion, we agree to speak only for ourselves and make space for others, be as present as possible, be aware of who is missing in each conversation. Remember that no one has a monopoly on truth and everyone's experience is valid, that we critique ideas and not people, that we listen to our bodies and tend to their needs, that we give some grace for technical and logistical difficulties, and that we aim for connection and not perfection as we are together today.
Sounds good. Thanks, Kat. And hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Kiki Hubbard. I'm the Director of Advocacy and Communications for Organic Seed Alliance. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with OSA, we are a mission-driven organization that works nationally to ensure that growers have the seed they need to be successful, and that seed remains in the hands of growers and the communities they feed. We achieve these broader goals through 3 program areas: research, education, and advocacy. And while we're based in Port Townsend, which is a small town on the Olympic Peninsula in Washington State, much of our work extends beyond the Pacific Northwest region to include projects and partners throughout the US. In fact, we have staff in the Midwest, in California. I'm based here in Montana. And I encourage you to check out a few of the links that my colleagues are popping into the chat box right now to learn more about our programs. Next, we're going to hear brief introductions from 3 of our co-hosts, the National Organic Coalition, Farm Action, and Experimental Farm Network. You'll hear from 2 additional co-hosts, the National Sustainable Agriculture Coalition and the National Latino Farmers and Ranchers Trade Association in a few minutes. But first, I'm going to pass the mic to Alice Rundy with the National Organic Coalition.
Thanks, Kiki. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alice Rundy. My pronouns are she, her. I'm the Coalition Manager for the National Organic Coalition, or NOC. NOC is a coalition of 13 member organizations, including Organic Seed Alliance, and we represent a wide array of organic stakeholders, including farmers, ranchers, environmentalists, consumers, and industry members. We seek to advance organic food and agriculture and ensure a united voice for organic integrity. And we will be making recommendations for the inclusion of organic provisions across Farm Bill titles, including commodities, crop insurance, conservation, energy, nutrition, and horticulture. So we're very excited for the conversation today and getting to hear from everybody.
Thank you, Alice. We're so grateful to have you joining us for the event. I'm going to hand it over to Sarah Cardin with Farm Action next.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah Cardin. I am the policy advocate at Farm Action. My pronouns are she, her. Our organization is focused, it's a research and advocacy organization that is fighting monopoly control of our agricultural, food and farm system. And I'm excited to be here today.
Thanks so much, Sarah. So grateful to have you as a co-host as well. Nate Kleiman with Experimental Farm Network, please take it away.
Thanks, Kiki. I'm really happy to be here. Nate Kleiman, he, him pronouns. I'm currently on Oneida Land here in upstate New York, but I'm based outside of Philadelphia and southern New Jersey. Experimental Farm Network is a nonprofit. We are focused on facilitating collaboration on sustainable ag research and plant breeding, especially focused on developing plants and growing systems for climate change mitigation, and really interested in this topic and really excited that we can be a part of it.
Thank you, Nate, and thank you again to all of our co-hosts for being a part of today's event. Next, I'm going to hand over the mic to another co-host. As Kat mentioned before, Nichelle Harriet is here with us from the National Sustainable Agriculture Coalition. Nichelle is the Senior Policy Manager for NSAC and is based in Washington, D.C. OSA is also a member of NSAC in addition to the National Organic Coalition, as Alice mentioned. And we've been a member for some time now, which means I've had the pleasure of working with Nichelle for quite a few years. And I'm deeply grateful that she's here with us today to provide an overview of the Farm Bill and why it matters. Nichelle, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Can you guys see my slides?
It looks great. Thanks, Nichelle.
Okay, great. Thank you. So as Kiki mentioned, I am Nichelle Harriet. I am a Senior Policy Manager with NSAC here in DC. For those of you who don't know who we are a coalition of over 130 farm and farmer-led organizations across the country working together on federal farm and food policy at the national level. We work on everything from crop insurance reform to conservation, research, and local and regional food policy. Our members direct our priorities and inform our work based on those real on-the-ground conditions and experiences that farmers and others in the food and ag space face. This is us at one of our last in-person meetings. So just to give you a quick overview of how we work. So NSAC works by having farmers and other stakeholders share their experiences of working their operations and what challenges they have accessing federal programs. This feedback gets relayed to our members who collect this information and share it with NSAC. And then together we discussed what are some of those, what are the strategies to go about improving the farming experience and making policies and programs work better for farmers. Once we formulated a plan, we head to USDA and to Congress to advocate for those changes. So today we're here to talk about Farm Bill, what it is and why we should care about it. If you're a farmer or if you're a researcher, you definitely should care about the Farm Bill and how it impacts everything in the agricultural space. But before we head into what the Farm Bill is, it is really important to set the scene on how the American agricultural landscape got shaped, right? We cannot talk about American ag without first acknowledging that it was built on stolen land and stolen and exploited labor. From lands taken from indigenous communities to be worked by enslaved laborers, there have been many shortcomings of federal policies in shaping US ag. Today, we still see evidence of disparate treatment among certain groups by the USDA. There is still documented evidence, even today, that USDA field offices discriminate against Black, Indigenous, and other farmers of color, from denying them loans to restricting their access to federal programs. So with that in mind, there is still a lot to do to ensure that food and farm policies and programs are accessible to all farmers. And one avenue to try to fix those disparities is the Farm Bill, which some of you may disagree, but it is an opportunity that we do have. So what is the Farm Bill? So the Farm Bill is a massive piece of legislation authorized every 5 years that sets most of the policies and programs and funding for anything related with food and ag. So for instance, it defines who's eligible for loans, which operations can access crop insurance, how much is spent on agriculture research, and of course, food assistance programs for low-income families. We are at the beginning of the reauthorizing of the Farm Bill. The last Farm Bill was signed in 2018, and it is set to expire in 2023, which is next year. So that means a new Farm Bill must be made law, and we are at the stage in the process in this green box here. Once the 2023 Farm Bill is signed, and we can't really say when that actually will be, hopefully sometime late next year, stakeholders like NSAC and others will work on ensuring that the program and policies written into the Farm Bill are implemented as intended by the federal agencies and in the field. So as mentioned before, the Farm Bill impacts almost everything in the food and ag space. So what we eat, how we support our farmers, how we conserve natural resources in tandem with ag, as well as health and nutrition. On the left in green, you would see examples of what is actually in the Farm Bill. Like I said, the Farm Bill covers almost everything related to farming, but not everything. What is in includes credit programs, rural development, research and education, conservation, and commodity programs. On the right, in the red, we see things like food safety, tax issues, school meals, WIC, and farm worker rights. These are not included in the Farm Bill. These will be covered by other pieces of legislation. So the Farm Bill, like I said, is a huge piece of legislation. It is made up of 12 titles or chapters, each one of them focused on certain aspects of farm policy. So Title I, for example, is commodity programs. Title II is conservation, so things like CSP and EQIP and CRP. Title VII deals with research, how we fund research, including research around plant breeding and cultivar development. That will all be in Title VII. And Title XI is crop insurance. So billions of dollars are spent over the life of each Farm Bill. And like I said, each Farm Bill spans the length of 5 years. This pie chart really puts into perspective the breakdown of spending for the average Farm Bill. No surprise, nutrition assistance is more than 75% of funding, while everything else, especially the programs that we tend to work on, are less than 25% of the pie. So you would see like crop insurance, 9%, conservation, 7%, and everything else from credit research, just a sliver, less than maybe 1%. So next year, when the new Farm Bill is set to be reauthorized, we need to rely on key players to ensure what's in the Farm Bill are things that we support, right? So that means we need to work with members of Congress, but particularly those who will be authorizing, or I should say, authoring the Farm Bill. These members are those on both the House and Senate Ag committees. So they write the bill, they decide what's in it, what's out, they debate it. Then they send it to full Congress for a vote, where once passed, it will get signed into law by the president. But during each stage, it is critical that we hear from grassroots voices like ours. So we need to hear from farmers. We need to hear from farm and food advocacy groups. We need to hear from researchers. These are the voices that are really integral to shaping what ends up in the Farm Bill. This slide is just more of a visual of what I just described. So the Ag committees, both the House and Senate, would debate and write the bill, which will then go for a vote. and then finally signed by the president. So the process of reauthorizing the Farm Bill has already started. This is 2022, 2023 is just a couple short months away, so we need to get started. So you may have heard or even participated in some field hearings that are currently being held in various states to solicit input into the Farm Bill process. And right now, the House Ag Committee has a stakeholder input form available online for the public to share their feedback on what is working and what is not. As you are aware, we do have an election coming up in November, which will pretty much shake things up and really determine who actually will be writing the Farm Bill. And we will know who those members of the House and Ag Committee will be in early 2023. So it is important for us to start collecting information and providing feedback on what is working and what is not now, so that we can have a Farm Bill that is signed on time. Another thing about timing, so when will we have a new Farm Bill? Will it be signed in 2023? We actually don't know. Historically, Farm Bills have been delayed, some even for years. So it is possible to see a final Farm Bill pushed back to 2024. Hopefully that's not the case, but it is entirely possible. So NSAC and some other allies of ours, we are currently developing our 2023 Farm Bill policy platform, which will contain all our recommendations on the Farm Bill and its 12 titles. We've been focused on making sure that agriculture's role in tackling the climate change crisis is addressed through Farm Bill policies. We also just came out of a pandemic, and we've noticed that, and you've noticed, the impact that it had on our food system. So ensuring that we bolster local and regional food systems and infrastructure is also key. We need to make sure that every and each Farm Bill program can be accessed by all farmers, especially BIPOC farmers, including increasing their access to credit and to land. We also need to reform how we go about crop insurance and commodity subsidies, which tend to favor large-scale farm operations and not small and mid-sized farmers. So in a nutshell, we've just very, very quickly gone through what the Farm Bill is and what's in it and why you should care. So why should you care? Well, if you are a consumer, you make groceries every week. If you are a farmer, if you are even a researcher working in the ag space, then we need to hear from you, right? You are the ones experiencing the impacts directly or indirectly of the Farm Bill. So decision makers need to hear what your experience with growing and accessing food is so that improvements can be made. We all want to see a more just and accessible food system, and now the Farm Bill provides an opportunity to make changes that can make our food system one that we can be proud of. And I hope that by the end of the session today, you guys will feel a little more empowered to be part of the process. So with that, I encourage you to keep in touch with me and NSAC. We have an enormous amount of information on our website. If you are unable to navigate our very complex and dense website, you can also email me at the email you see here. Thank you, and I will turn it back over to Kiki.
Thank you so much, Nichelle. That was very helpful and very succinct. I just want to underscore what Nichelle said about NSAC's resources. I encourage you to sign up their newsletter. The blog posts that they publish on a regular basis are some of the most in-depth and helpful analyses I've ever read on these policy issues. Next, I'm going to pass the mic over to OSA's policy intern, Florentina, who will introduce the next part of our agenda. Florentina, take it away.
Thank you. So as we talk about the current state of our seed, food, farming systems, it's important to hear testimony and stories from multiple voices about their experiences, their priorities, and their needs regarding Farm Bill programs. So with that said, during this next session, which we're going to call the Power of Our Experience, we're going to hear from Abby Fain with the Native Farm Bill Coalition, and also Eugene Pickett with the National Latino Farmers and Ranchers Trade Association. So I'll start by passing the mic to Abby.
Hello, my name is Abby Fain. I am a citizen of the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma, and I'm the Director of Policy and Government Relations for the Intertribal Agriculture Council. I am here to talk about IAC's work with the Native Farm Bill Coalition, and which is made up of, was founded by 3 other partner organizations to advance Indian country priorities within the Farm Bill. And I have some slides, if I can share those. Okay, what about now?
Yeah, that works.
Okay, so thanks for your patience. I'm here on behalf of the Native Farm Bill Coalition, and we are a nationwide initiative that's comprised of member tribal nations and organizations. So the Farm Bill, the core founding partners are the Intertribal Agriculture Council, which is a nonprofit that has started in the 80s and provides technical assistance to tribal producers on the ground all across the country. And so our network of specialists who help producers navigate USDA applications and, all the way to figuring out what's wrong with their soil. It ranged from folks in Alaska all the way to the East Coast. The other organizations are the Shakopee Mdewankanton Sioux Community, the National Congress of American Indians, and our research partner, the Indigenous Food and Agriculture Initiative. So the reason the Native Farm Bill Coalition started was that for most of the existence of the Farm Bill since the 1930s, tribes and tribal people were left out, even though our tribal lands are governed differently and apart from state jurisdiction over lands. And so we saw this big need to provide a concentrated and unified effort for tribal producers and tribal governments to speak to what priorities will be for tribal people and tribal lands within the Farm Bill. And then even once the Farm Bill is done, we work with USDA to ensure that the regulations that they promulgate in support of the Farm Bill accurately reflect the tribal provisions in the Farm Bill. So we got started in 2017, and that really what led our effort was this initial report, Regaining Our Future, which outlined the risks and opportunities for Native communities in the 2018 Farm Bill. It was pretty comprehensive. It addressed each of the titles in the Farm Bill and basically went over what was and wasn't working for tribal producers and tribes with jurisdiction over their lands. And this year, we got our effort going again within the last year. Our membership has grown. We represent 208 federally recognized tribes out of 574 altogether. And we also have supporting intertribal and Native organizations, as well as some allies. As a result of the previous Farm Bill coalition efforts, we were able to work with tribal leaders and tribal producers to ensure that Congress passed a farm bill that included 63 new tribal specific provisions in the Farm Bill. And they ranged anywhere from tribal parity, which said in the law where there are places that give states power to allocate funding or states power to set up certain types of regulatory efforts. It's our goal is to make sure that anywhere state is mentioned, they also mention tribes or tribal governments. And then additionally, some of the provisions included access to funding and grants that include specific set-asides for tribal communities who were missing out on opportunities because when funding was going through states, they bypass a lot of tribal communities because they don't have jurisdiction over those lands. And then we also got provisions around training and infrastructure and technical assistance. And finally, and importantly, provisions that strengthened what we can do around our traditional and native produced foods. So building on that, while we were able to get a lot more provisions that really support our producers and our tribal communities generally, there are a number of items that didn't make it through. And so in a follow-up to that original report, we have done a number of roundtables across the country in tribal communities. I believe we've hosted around 38 so far, from Alaska and Washington to the Dakotas to we're going to be heading to the Southwest in the month, and more to come throughout the year, where we open up these roundtables for tribal producers to share what is working and what isn't working. And this informs this report that we'll be publishing hopefully as soon as Labor Day passes, which we would be glad to share with the group here. And we'll again highlight what the opportunities are and hit on especially what happened in the 2018 Farm Bill and where that's worked well and where additional support is needed from that. And then even with our ongoing farm roundtables, we expect to release additional supplemental materials to make sure that the voices of tribal producers and tribal communities really are making it to the decision makers on the Farm Bill. And so in support of this, in addition to the roundtables, we've been hosting a number of webinars by title of the Farm Bill so that our producers are aware of what exactly the Farm Bill covers and how it might be applicable to them. And then as the year goes on, we will also be planning food fairs that highlight tribally produced food, as well as fly-ins where we will be able to bring in tribal producers and tribal elected officials and tribal youth who are involved in agriculture to meet with members of Congress, to meet with members representing their states, their districts, and importantly, get them before members on the Ag Committee. And we're hopeful that this will continue, just serve as a springboard to us maximizing what our communities can achieve through the Farm Bill. And that sums up our organization and our efforts to really present a unified voice in numbers on the things where we have common interests among tribes to hopefully influence this next Farm Bill. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Abby. I'm going to go ahead and pass the mic to Eugene.
Hello, my name is Eugene Pickett, and I'm with the National Latino Farmers and Ranchers. Many people know us as the National Latino Farmers and Ranchers Trade Association, which still exists, but the 501c3 of which we do business is National Latino Farmers and Ranchers. The Farm Bill is, I mean, totally interesting. You know, I mean, and like, I'm not a novice, but it hasn't been a lifelong pursuit. You know, the USDA hasn't been a long life pursuit, but I've been in farming and ranching for quite some time. And the interesting thing about it, all USDA, I'm a vegetarian. So all USDA meant to me is when I went in the market, I would see USDA, the big sign over the meat section is like, okay, with USDA, that's the meat. I don't deal with that, you know? So in the process of starting to understand it and starting to really see it from a policy standpoint and what it meant to communities, you know, that like the language in the Farm Bill and how it protected, you know, a certain class of individuals in the United States, which most of us are not a part of that class. That within National Latinos, we recognize, you know, from the time that they said it was underserved communities or the socially disadvantaged, and then, you know, it moved to BIPOC. We recognize the language, but in National Latinos, we made a policy decision that we would address from a standpoint of historically discriminated against classes. So that meant women, that meant anyone who had, you know, like indigenous populations, whatever the colors are, you know, that if there was a feeling of discrimination on a historical basis, then whatever information, whatever projects, whatever programs that we impact, then we're open, you know, to sharing. So, you know, and in this, you know, like my boss, I got the information that I would be sharing with you today, you know, and so like, you know, I do shoot from the hip. I'm very good at that. You know, when I thought, you know, like the Organic Seed Alliance, how significant that becomes, because, you know, like the protection of the seeds, you know, is a sovereign right. You know, so there's movements, you know, like throughout the country, and you have to be, and I really welcome all of you, you know, to this, I think this struggle, you know, which is, you know, hinges on really being a battle, a war, you know, that equals, you know, positioning ourselves so that, you know, we take advantage of what's available as resources. So in doing that, it's very important, you know, that we recognize one another. Now, I always like, you know, when I say young people, if you are on this line and you are under 50 years old, then you're the young people, you know, and like we welcome you to this tradition because I'm 71 years old. And so a lot of, you know, my constituents, you know, and that are now, we are becoming elders because there's a whole group that is retired, has passed on very gracefully. So the history of how these land struggles must exist, if we don't encourage you, then, you know, like it's for naught. Because I don't have another 30, 40 years, you know what I'm saying? You know, I don't look towards that. So we do these projects and programs and we get pulled in out of the field, you know, because our National Latinos is a very boots on the ground type organization. You know, if you are in the field, that's where we're going to find you. If you're down on the river, that's where we're going to be at. If you're in the corral, if you're in grazing land, that's where we must go because that's where our population, our constituent base exists. So that's where we have to exist. And in doing that and in recognizing, especially an organization like this and all the faces, you know, it's encouraging to see women, you know, and women of color, you know, younger people, you know, we see the bearded people, you know, I mean, this equals that there's going to be life, you know, that exists in the Farm Bill because you become the advocates, you know, and you have to learn the process. Now, what we will be doing for our, in National Latinos, we do an annual Congreso, and it's, but COVID forced us to develop a virtual platform. So we do virtual, which goes out, the platform can exist and tap into at least 1,000 people because of one of our partners allowed us to access their platform. And so that's like national and international. So the save the date for the annual Congresso, which is the 27th through the 29th of October. We develop our interactions at that Congresso, and that Congresso is held at the Isla Pueblo. So Sister Fane, we your neighbors because we over here in New Mexico. And there are groups that come down from Oklahoma to engage and present. And so as we do this, we identify with this struggle of the land, but also seed sovereignty. And a funny story, what happened in New Mexico in 2018, there was a move by a group, a research group out of New Mexico State that had partnered with Monsanto. And they wanted to set up a committee that was going to regulate all seeds that would go in the ground in New Mexico. Had the meeting at 8 o'clock in the morning. So, all the pueblos were there. All small farmers and ranchers. We had about 300 people that came to this event, and 297 people spoke against. And there were only 3 people who spoke for. And that was Monsanto themselves and the researchers out of New Mexico State. And the position was the audacity of controlling seeds. Because seeds, for us, we're dealing with heirloom, we're dealing with historical, we're dealing with private family interactions with seeds. And if you control our seeds, then we don't have what we need to go into the ground of our production. So when I was thinking organic seed alliance, you're taking a very formidable position on this field of play. So I'm just very encouraged that I see you. Encouraged that my boss was like, hey, you need to be on here to do this, presentation. I'm thinking to myself, how can I fit that in? Well, things of importance, we find time to fit it in. And this is very important. You have a appealing audience, but you're coming to do the work to get a better understanding, because voices who haven't been heard in the Farm Bill before must be heard, because you're going to bring fresh ideas. And even if you're a novice, you still engage, you get involved, because over the next 3 decades, you will perfect your perception. You'll perfect the language, because the language has changed every 3 sessions that I've seen. We've gone from socially disadvantaged to BIPOC. What's going to come next? You know what I mean? So interjecting your thoughts and your ideas, and see, all of you are far more tech savvy than my generation. And that tech savviness, is going to be ever so important, because you're going to pick that Farm Bill apart in a way that we probably even haven't thought about. So, it's just really encouraging, and I welcome you to this battlefield, and you're bringing life. And it's not a game, you're bringing life. And see, whenever that happens, then it's like a fresh breath of air. So in this struggle, it's like, hey, welcome aboard, stay in it, because everybody eats. And if we don't have good food, then we're going to be sick. And we don't want to be a sick society. So thank you very much. And thank you for having me. And I'm just really encouraged and inspired by what I see here.
Thank you so much, Eugene. If you want to please join me in thanking Abby and Eugene for being with us here today. We can give a little thumbs up or put a thanks in the chat. Thank you so much, both of you, for sharing your experiences. I'm going to pass the mic back over to Kat, and she's going to get us set up for small group discussions.
Thank you, Florentina. Thank you, Abby and Eugene. So wonderful to hear about the really important work you're doing, and thanks for your words of inspiration as well. Eugene, on new fresh voices in the Farm Bill. Let's do it. So Rebecca is getting us set up to send us out into our breakout rooms for our small group discussions. And we're going to, for the next 20 minutes, go into those small groups to talk about our experiences with and our visions for the Farm Bill moving forward. Each group is going to have a moderator who's going to be holding this space. And the dialogue is going to be prompted by 5 questions. Moderators are going to be taking notes on the dialogue and the discussion, and also inviting you to add your own thoughts and perspectives directly into that document too. So after today's session, the team here at OSA is going to digest the notes from all the groups. That's going to help inform our own Farm Bill policy work, as well as we're going to share those themes and major takeaways with today's co-hosts and the policy coalitions that are with us today and that we're part of, to help inform and, really importantly, ground truth their Farm Bill policy organizing. So after, and I do want to flag, I saw a couple of questions in the chat asking for the slide deck from today of the different presentations. We'll connect with the speakers to see if they're okay with that, and send out some follow-up materials that will include at least some of the slides, if not all. Let's see. So after we're in our small groups for 20 minutes, we're going to come back into the main room to share out themes from the discussions. I am not going to call on you and require you to do it. It is going to be a popcorn style. I think that's it, except for as we head into the rooms, I want to remind us all about the discussion guidelines that we shared at the top of today's event. Bottom line, please be kind and respectful to one another as we're in dialogue with each other, and be thoughtful of how much you're speaking or how much you're standing back. And I think that's all I have. With that, Rebecca, are we ready to roll out into our groups? How did things go? Any thumbs up? Good conversations? Yeah, awesome. Well, we're gonna shift into some, I don't want to say report backs, but some share outs. Let's take the next 5 minutes or so. I'm going to invite moderators and also participants if you want to add into it, or if your group chose somebody other than the moderator to do some share outs, great. But because of the size of the room, I'd like us to use the raise hand function on your Zoom. So you can find that under reactions. And if you want to just go ahead and raise your hand, and I will call on you to come off mute to do your share outs. Nate, I see your hand. Go ahead and come off mute.
All right, thanks, Kat. So our group was kind of small. We had 5 or 6 people there. There was a lot of folks said things about having the Farm Bill do more to support farmers of color who've been discriminated against in the past, to make good for that, to make good on that discrimination and make some reparations. We had a couple of folks out at the OSA field in Washington who talked about providing more funding for breeding work, especially outside of the university and government settings. How can we better reward breeding efforts and provide support for that? And also to provide more support for small-scale farmers, especially new farmers, and access to farmland, how to help get folks started on agricultural land. And that's a taste of it. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Nate. Sandra, I see your hand. You wanted to come off mute and share what your group chatted about?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
Yeah, we had a lot of the National Latino Farmers and Ranchers. We were all there. So it was kind of like a group focus session. And we also had Katia Ramirez with PPA. She was lovely and expressed a lot of sentiments of how can she bring this back to her community, the Latino community, and listen to their voices. So we said that these questions are the questions that she should be asking in her community as well. But the bottom line that we saw throughout is that we need to value the farm worker, the farmers, the ranchers, the producers. They are the foundation of all of this work. And so if we don't value them and their well-being, we don't have an equitable and inclusive system, that things start to break down. And that's what we're seeing, right? So the producers are the most important individuals. They are the bottom line. Their state of well-being determines the state of our food and farm system. Inclusivity, equity, very important. And something super important that Rudy, our ED, said was, we need an immediate moratorium for loans to give producers time to breathe and catch up. That is like immediate, because farms and ranches are being closed and we're going to lose our small producers that way. Thank you.
Thanks, Sandra. I'm seeing a lot of head nods and thumbs up on that in agreement. Sarah, I see you next. I'm just going in order as y'all came up on my screen. You want to go ahead and, there you go.
Sorry. Hi. So we had a great group. There was 6 or 7 of us. A couple issues that came up multiple times were about land access and succession transitions and incentivizing transitions from existing landowners and farmers to the next generation. There was also a lot of conversations about climate change and supporting our farmers through climate change and giving them access to funds and infrastructure that will support them as where there's seems like drought is becoming more common, not only in the West, but coast, but also in a lot of other places throughout the country this summer. Our conservation programs, making sure they have funding, which we did get a nice influx with the recent Inflation Reduction Act, but also reforming some of those conservation programs to make sure that the limited funding they do have is really going to the kinds of practices that will support our environment and our climate. As well as improved crop insurance options, especially for diversified producers, and better access to grants and credit for new farmers. So those were kind of our big points of discussion that came out of our group.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Thank you. I see several more hands and I want to hear from each of you. So if you can keep your report out very brief, so we have one more sort of next steps, what we can do from Nichelle that I want to get to before we wrap up. Rudy, I see you next.
Well, one of the major things that we need to do is we need to remediate our infrastructure. And so one of the things that we have been working with is a National Infrastructure Bank, which will allow us to bring our infrastructure to good working order to the tune of we need at least $5 trillion. And we have the answer to that particular issue, because otherwise, whatever it is that we do with regard to the programs, if we don't have a good infrastructure, we're not going to be able to build the resiliency regarding our food production. Thank you.
Thank you, Rudy. Thank you so much. Anna, I see you next.
Thank you, Kat. I will try to be fast. The main topic that the group talked was about dignifying the working the farms. So working promoting mental health policies that promote mental health, that take care of the health of the farmers, like health benefits, more now that people are experiencing extra stresses with climate change. A well-paid overtime, professionalize the agricultural work, unionize, and value, like policies that lead to being a farmer is a dignified work. I think that that was more what we talk about.
Thank you so much, Anna. Thank you. Alice, I see your hand next.
Real quick, we talked a lot about the themes that have been brought up here around equity, social justice, and a transition of farmland and land access. We also talked a lot about more support for farmer mentorships, more support for organic specific research and outreach, not just the research part, efforts for food recovery and managing food waste, soil health as a really important part of agriculture, not just the food production. And we talked about crop insurance too, and how that could be changed to support more sustainable farming practices.
Thanks so much, Alice. Amy, I see your hand.
Yep, really quickly, just to add things that haven't come up, we discussed parity and disparity to parity. And another great thing would be green scissors, removing environmentally destructive practices in the Farm Bill, and definitely reducing support for commodity crops, especially GMO commodities.
And a lot of commodities. Thanks, Amy. And I see that some folks have added updates in the chat too. Thank you, Lee. Thank you, Jasmine. Thank you, Michael, for doing that. Again, we can share out the major takeaways from the groups with participants here as well, and we can continue conversations in Organic Seed Commons. Really quickly, I want to pass over back to Nichelle Harriet, who's going to just give us some sort of walking away from today's conversation with next steps, what we can do right now. Thanks, Nichelle.
Thank you. What a really great discussion today. Oops, where's my slide? Oh, no, not too from there. I'm just going to go all the way down to the end. What are some of the steps we can take today as next steps in informing this whole Farm Bill policy process? So we've just come out from the breakout groups where we've had some really great priorities coming forward, and those are priorities that I feel everyone can agree on. So the first one here is learn, start your groundwork, which is what we did today. Basically, by attending sessions like these, learning what some of these priorities are, and then keeping in contact with organizations that are hosting a session like this today, like NSAC, like OSA, and others who represent the farmers and the ranchers and other folks working in the food and ag space. They are the ones who will be able to help get your message heard by the members of Congress who ultimately need to start working on the Farm Bill. What we really need to do is educate them, right? So reach out to your member of Congress to let them know what are the issues that we discussed today, for example, that are really important for reform in the next Farm Bill. And SAC could help facilitate some of those meetings with your member of Congress if you are interested in letting them know what your concerns are, or if you don't know where to start, we can help. I think I mentioned earlier that there is an online portal. The link I can share maybe after the session. The House Ag Committee is currently taking input from the public on what is working and what is not working in this current Farm Bill. So there is at least that opportunity for you to let your members of Congress know what we've spoken about here today. And then start asking your community, your farmers, people in your networks about some of these other issues, some of which we may have not have spoken about today, that that are of concern. So, for example, have you wanted to apply to a Farm Bill program but didn't know how, or maybe you applied and you got turned away and you didn't know why? We need to know what happened so that we can collate that information and share it with folks on the Hill. Are you concerned about funding for the programs that you use? I think that was mentioned earlier about conservation funding, which, yes, is always continues to be an issue. Or whether you use a cost share program and you're unsatisfied with your cost share reimbursement, it really doesn't cover much of anything. Those are things that we need to hear about. So thank you again. Reach out to organizations that are on this call that can help you collect that feedback and share it with folks on the Hill. We have, I would say, a year working on the next Farm Bill. Depending on what November looks like, you know, who knows? We may need to switch up tactics come early 2023, but the work starts now, and I'm really looking forward to keeping in touch with every one of you and working with you. And I think that is all. I don't know if we have time for questions.
We don't, unfortunately, have time for questions, Nichelle. And I thank you so much. It's so nice to have some steps to take away with today. We're going to be following up with plenty of additional resources to everybody who's registered. Thank you, everybody. I want to point to the chat box where Rebecca has dropped a link to the evaluation. Please, please, please let us know how today went for you so we can evolve and continue to hold these spaces. I'm so sorry to be a little bit over time. Thank you for your generosity with I don't know, good parties going long, as Florentina just texted to me. Be well, take good care of yourselves. This is one of many conversations and strategies we'll be having for Farm Bill organizing. And thank you. Goodbye. Take good care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.